Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Before starting the video, please subscribe and keep watching for more details videos. Coco Gauff faces one of the most important moments in her career, so far away from the cameras. Coco Gauff was knocked out of the US Open by Naomi Osaka in the fourth round. Gauff sent a message to her fans after losing in straight sets to the rejuvenated Osaka, and she has some work to do in order to perfect her game. Tracy Austin has delivered advice to Gauff to try to get her on the straight and narrow, although it has to be said that 2025 has seen some positives. Gauff beat Aryna Sabalenka to win the French Open, but then made a first-round exit at Wimbledon just a few weeks later. Gauff made a claim about Sabalenka after that final, with the Belarusian being pretty disrespectful to the champion. American player Gauff made some mistakes before this year's US Open, and ahead of the next tournament, this feels like a really big time for the star. Coco Gauff now facing an important moment in her career. An important aspect of going out relatively early at the US Open for Gauff is that she has been able to sneak out of the spotlight. Gauff was praised for her classy comments to Osaka, and clearly, she's one of the more likable players on tour for the way she remains professional even in defeat. The 21-year-old has been able to shut herself away from the usual media razzmatazz that follows her around and simply iron out the issues in her game. Gauff has already stated she plans to work on her game ahead of the Asia swing, and this particular period of work could define the next steps in her entire career. Gauff has to work on service flaws. Steve Johnson has expressed concerns about Gauff's inconsistent serve, and that is a fair reservation among her critics. Gauff is tantalizingly close to becoming a dominant force in tennis, but without her serve being rectified, she has absolutely no chance to kick on and win more major titles. At 21, there is still bags of time for Gauff to iron out the imperfections and become as consistent as someone like Sabalenka, but her game needs to become more complete. Gauff's service game has been a real issue for far too long, and if it's not rectified right now, it could be something that turns out to impact her across her entire career. Coco Gauff faces one of the most important moments in her career, so far away from the cameras. The bright lights of Arthur Ashe Stadium, the roars that shake Melbourne Park, the crisp lawns of Wimbledon where history whispers in every bounce. Coco Gauff has lived inside those moments, bathed in the glow of cameras, microphones, and millions of eyes. But greatness isn't always sculpted on center court. Sometimes, the moments that truly define a career happen in silence, away from the roar of the crowd, the click of shutters, the churn of headlines. For Coco Gauff, one of the most important moments of her journey came far from the spotlight, in a place where only those closest to her could see it unfold. The paradox of visibility. Since bursting onto the scene at just 15 years old, defeating Venus Williams on the lawns of Wimbledon, Gauff has carried the weight of public expectation like a second racket in her bag. Every step, every smile, every slump has been dissected by cameras. If she wins, she's celebrated as the next great hope of American tennis. If she loses, the questions pile in. Was she distracted? Overwhelmed? Pressured too soon? The paradox of her young career is that while the world knows Coco Gauff the player, few truly know Coco Gauff the person. And the person, like all athletes, is shaped not by what happens under blinding stadium lights, but by what happens in the shadows, where no cameras follow. The quiet crucible. The moment came after a string of early exits at tournaments where she was expected to go deep. The headlines were critical. Gauff struggles to deliver. Pressure mounts on teenage star. Is Coco ready? But the real story wasn't happening in the press room. It was unfolding in a dimly lit practice facility, somewhere in the lull between tournaments. No TV crews, no Instagram lives, no polished soundbites. Just Coco, her coaches, and the echo of tennis balls against the walls. She had a decision to make. Would she allow the weight of expectation to bend her spirit? Or would she recalibrate, redefine herself, and set the stage for a new chapter? This was no mere technical adjustment. Though her serve, forehand, and footwork all demanded refinement. This was an existential reckoning. What did she want from tennis? And what was she willing to endure to get it? A private struggle. In private, Coco confided in her tight-knit circle. Her parents, Candy and Corey, who had guided her since childhood. her coaches, who tried to balance honesty with encouragement. "It's easy to smile on camera," she admitted in one closed-door session. "But sometimes I don't know if people understand how heavy it feels. Every match isn't just tennis. It feels like a verdict." Her parents reminded her of something simple. The game was hers, not the world's. It didn't belong to critics or to cameras. It belonged to the girl who first fell in love with the sport on public courts in Delray Beach. So, away from the cameras, she rebuilt. Not just strokes and strategies, but purpose. The work in the shadows. Day after day, she put in hours of repetition. Not glamorous, not dramatic, but essential. The serve, once erratic under pressure, became a weapon again. Hundreds of serves a day, until muscle memory replaced hesitation. The mental game. She worked with sports psychologists, not for headlines, but for peace of mind. Breathing exercises, visualization, journaling. Tools invisible to cameras, but powerful on court. The body. Strength training, recovery, injury prevention. The grind of keeping a teenager's body durable enough for the rigors of the tour. In these unseen hours, she stitched together the resilience that stadiums would later celebrate. Why this moment matters. Every champion has a crucible moment. Serena Williams after early setbacks, Rafael Nadal during injury years, Roger Federer when he reigned in his temper. For Coco, her crucible didn't come in a Grand Slam final. It came in silence, when she was forced to face the question, is this who I am, or who others want me to be? Her decision to double down, to own her path, marked one of the most important moments of her career. Not because the world saw it, but precisely because it was hers alone. Far from the cameras, closer to herself. The beauty of this hidden chapter is that it allowed Coco to reconnect with the pure love of the game. When she laughed during practice rallies, no one broadcast it. When she slammed a racket in frustration, there were no headlines. When she found quiet joy in hitting a perfect backhand down the line, there were no GIFs circulating online. It was just Coco, rediscovering Coco. The world would later see the results in matches won, titles lifted, and interviews given. But the seed of all that success was planted in a moment the cameras missed. The public versus private self. Sports often present a polished narrative. The meteoric rise, the fall, the comeback. But those arcs are built on private battles we rarely witness. For Coco, the cameras show us the competitor. Away from them, she's also a young woman juggling friendships, family, and personal growth. A role model navigating the responsibility of being a symbol for young black girls worldwide. A teenager wrestling with the normal uncertainties of identity and purpose. It is in the unseen spaces that she learns how to carry both identities, the prodigy and the person, without losing herself. A mirror for us all. There's something profoundly human in the fact that one of Coco Gauff's most important moments happened away from the cameras. It reminds us that growth often occurs when no one is watching. The student burning midnight oil before the big exam. The artist sketching drafts no one will ever see. The athlete sweating in an empty gym. These moments rarely get applause, but they make the applause possible. Foreshadowing the future. When Coco Gauff lifts more trophies, and she will, it will be tempting for commentators to say, this was the turning point, pointing to a high-profile win. But the truth will be different. The true turning point already happened. In silence, in practice, in reflection. It happened when she decided that her career wasn't going to be defined by noise, but by her own conviction. And that decision will echo far longer than any highlight reel. Conclusion: the power of the unseen. The cameras will keep following Coco Gauff. They'll capture her joy, her pain, her triumphs, and her stumbles. But one of the most important moments of her career will always remain invisible to the world because it happened in private, when the lights were off, and only she could decide who she wanted to be. And perhaps that's the real beauty of her journey. The reminder that greatness isn't built in stadiums alone. It's built in the quiet moments when no one is watching, and the only audience is the self. For Coco Gauff, the world will remember the wins. She will remember this moment,